is that the agenda be approved as presented. If I can have a mover and a seconder, please. Carried. And Grant. All in favor? It's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest to declare? Seeing none, you may declare at any time if one should arise throughout the meeting. The first item is minutes of previous meetings from February 10th of 2025. The recommendation is that the minutes of the BioGRID Joint Board of Management meeting held on February 10th, 2025 be adopted. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Scott? Grant? All in favor? It's carried. We are turning to public participation presentations by Owen Sound Septic Services about lagoon use. So, welcome, Gary.
We've run into a bit of difficulty with the Ministry of Environment. Hard to believe. What I'm proposing, or we've talked, the two mayors and myself and a few other people. What I was proposing was to utilize the sewage lagoons as they are in a more frequent basis during inclement weather. What I was hoping to do is, right now it's $25 a cubic meter in order to dispose of it in your facility. I was kind of looking possibly for a little bit of a price reduction that we can work with, and then start utilizing it, you know, just that much more. I kind of threw some numbers together. I'm figuring maybe a load a day could be, maybe not, you know, 2 loads, 3 loads a week possibly. But the potential I'm estimating is probably about $3,000 a month in revenue to use if the price came down. And what I was looking at, I gotta read my own notes. I was looking at $150 a truckload type of thing. So just, you know, the math is just kind of a general idea to give you, you know, something to work with. So I was just throwing it out there, see if you guys are interested in, you know, having a, you know, a fairly constant revenue coming through the door. As right now, it's just the Sunset Strip that goes in until December the 1st, when we're mandated by the ministry to dump in there for the winter season type deal.
Gary, how many cubic meters in a truckload?
If the truck is full, it's 14.
So you're saying, like right now, if it's dry fields, you still have some places.
We still have, yes, we still have fields to dump on it when the weather's nice and dry the way it is.
But you're saying all your truckloads would come to the lagoon, and nothing would be spread on fields?
No, I can't say that. No, it would be, you know, if we're down Chatsworth Way, it would be more beneficial to me to whip into Georgian Bluffs, Chatsworth biodigester lagoon system. To get rid of it is driving to Clavering to land spread. So I would have to adjust my pricing, you know, just to kind of absorb that extra. But be able to use that if needed, or we still use the farm fields.
Mm-hmm.
Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Brittany. Just wondering, in regards to our whole cost, the Sunset Strip, I don't know what the cube cost for the Sunset Strip is right now as compared to what it is for the biodigester. There is a discounted rate. I know that through previous years on this board, we are raising that rate with the cost of inflation, but probably still doesn't recognize what the actual cost of operations is. So what is the procedure for finding out a fair value for, I guess, the lagoons as opposed to the biodigester?
Thank you for your question and for you, Mayor Carlton. You are correct. The Sunset Strip currently gets a discounted rate for tipping at the facility for bringing their materials to the site. Through this exercise, and as we move to what I'll call step 2 of the overall decommissioning of the biodigested facility, and looking to prioritize use and maintenance of the lagoons facility, we will be performing that cost analysis for presentation to the board and joint councils this fall, so you can understand how much tipping you need to be charging your users in order for the facility to be revenue neutral, including the existing users of the Sunset Strip. In my connection with Mr. Grady, we did offer to do the same and have that figure available to both the board and Mr. Grady in the fall to ensure that if we can offer a discounted rate, that all users are using the same rate and that the same rate can provide revenue neutrality for the site.
Brittany, are you aware of how many, it was owners back in 1975 that made a contribution to the original lagoons? Are you aware of how many owners that made those contributions are still businesses on the Sunset Strip? Because that would really dictate who reasonably should be getting a discounted rate.
I'm not off the top of my head, however, it would form part of our overall analysis for presentation. How do we take that back? Okay.
Is it fair to say that the lagoon should operate like a water system would operate, where the cost recovery is back to the water users, or in this case, the sewage users?
I think it would be fair to assume that, but there's no legislative requirement to dictate that, as there is for traditional water systems.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Mark Earl. I just, with all the questions we got up in the air right now with everything that's going on out there, I was kind of wondering about a discounted rate for a trial period until we get some solid answers as to where we are and what things cost. And because right now we don't know many numbers on what anything costs or what it's going to cost to do what we got to do down the road. So I didn't know if there's any appetite for a trial scenario with a discounted rate till we get some more solid information. Just throw that out there.
The rate that we established was because of the cost of the biodigester. I think we all know that the cost of the lagoons should be significantly less to operate. Again, I mean, we don't have all the information on the lagoons. Mr. Grady, or through you,
Go ahead.
sure, there must be a cost for applying to the fields right now.
There is, like I rent from a landowner and I'll say it's $8,000 a season for me to be able to use his land. And the onus is on me to maintain it and, do everything with it. So, and basically I can only use it. We didn't get on till about the middle of May. So now we're using it, full-time type of thing. And depending on the weather come fall, chances are we'll be finished up by Thanksgiving because the land it's clay loam type of thing. And it's just not feasible to be trying to get a truck into that field at that time.
Go ahead.
So were you asking, how much were you asking for?
Well, I just threw it out there. I was looking,
150 a load, is that?
150 a load. And that would just be whether it was a full load or a half load or whatever. Anytime I dumped there, it would be $150. And I worked that out to around $3,000 a month in revenue for you guys, give or take. That was just picking some numbers out of the air. That's not rocket science.
Thank you. What's the rate Sunset Strip right now? You know, Brittany?
$131.45 or an additional $10.24 per meter squared. Additional cost.
Okay, can you?
So,
What's that per load? Or do we know what that is a load?
so per load,
Basically, I'm making $125, give or take a load, plus they have a tipping fee that's added in there. And then if they go over a certain cubic meters on the given month, they pay like a service fee on top.
I'm trying to, in my head, evaluate how much a cube it should be, like, it.
Yeah.
So Brittany, you said 131, that's what they're paying per load, plus they're paying Gary to truck.
No, that's the total
that's-
cost, and then my revenue comes out of that $131 or whatever.
So they're getting a real.
So we're getting
Yeah.
$6 a load?
1024.
Sam?
If I may review, so they get Sunset Strip, they pay $131.45 on the first 2,000 gallons that get disposed. If they dispose more than 2,000, they pay the $10.24 per cubic meter. I know we have a fun conversion there between gallons and cubic meters, so we have to figure that out every time on top of the 131. So a business that disposed 40,800 gallons of material was charged $1,898 for tipping, plus the 131 for their normal disposal. That is all revenue for the lagoons or the biodigester, that is the name of the company. Then Own Sound Septic has an agreement where we pay them
Exactly.
for the contracted service of the collection. So the company doesn't necessarily pay
Sure.
Own Sound Septic.
So I think we all recognize that based on that, there's likely room for revenue generation from the Sunset Strip. But aside from that, a typical person out in the country with a septic tank,
Right.
with what you're presenting at $150 a load, how much is it going to cost that average homeowner to send to the biodigester as opposed to going to your field?
Like right now, at 1,000 gallons, that's, I don't, there again, I'm not good on meters, but it's about $125 tipping fee plus HST. So I was thinking if we could, cut that back to say $75 plus HST, it's saving your municipal residents a bit, and it saves me, or lets me still be in the flow with, being competitive too.
Go ahead. If I may, I do think that breaking this down to numbers that make sense to everyone is a beneficial exercise. And Mr. Grady, you said that you had until about Thanksgiving, is that correct?
Yes.
So we'd be happy to commit to bringing something back to the joint board just to ensure that our numbers are all in alignment, because we do want to prioritize revenue neutrality as we do move towards the lagoon use. So we'd be happy to break the numbers down and bring them back prior to Thanksgiving.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
I think it's an important part, that we get this right, and, whatever number we establish is a fair number. I think that works
Yeah.
good for
No,
Mr. Grady
that's
to
fine, and
know.
that's, we gotta get our foot in the door type of thing and try to get something figured out here.
Both councils will have a lot of questions in regards to, the report that Brittany brings back, so I mean, it'll be important to hear that we're working towards something that's revenue neutral.
Okay, good.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you. Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we have no delegations on agenda items, so our staff report. The recommendation from the staff report is that the BioGRID Joint Board of Management receive report CAO 2025-026 Georgian Bluffs / Chatsworth Biodigester Facility for information, and that the BioGRID Joint Board of Management hereby support option 2, full decommissioning of the biodigester site at an estimated cost of $814,000, and that staff be directed to work with GHD to complete all aspects of the full decommissioning of the site, including completion of a detailed decommissioning plan, hazardous materials survey, and amendments to the existing ECA, and that staff are further directed to undertake a condition assessment of the lagoon's infrastructure to determine feasibility of retaining their operation beyond decommissioning to an upset limit of 230,000, and that the lagoon's condition assessment decommissioning plan, all additional documents to support fulfillment of option 2, full decommissioning, be presented to the BioGRID Joint Board of Management upon completion. Before I ask for a mover and seconder, I am going to point out that this is the recommendation that's come out of the staff report that's in here. This is not maybe the recommendation that's coming from the joint councils. So we would need to be amending that moving forward. So, here, Mike.
Yeah, that's biting an awful lot more than we actually talked about. So I'd be willing to move that the BioGRID Joint Board of Management hereby support option 3, which is partial decommissioning of the biodigester site. And I don't think we know what the estimated cost was, so we just leave that out. So that we support option 3, partial decommissioning, and ask for further information to be brought back on what that could potentially look like. That would allow our staff to get more information on what Council Winters was talking about, what the options for the tanks may be. I don't want to go into spending $230,000 on looking at a lagoon study when we don't know some of the other, we need to bite off small pieces here. And I think the decommissioning, I got the sense everybody wants the decommissioning at some level. There's discussion about whether it's full or partial. I think we can all be maybe convinced of the partial if we have more information in regards to how those tanks can be utilized. That was my sense from the discussion, so.
That's good.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, mover and seconder. I'm looking to the clerk for how she wants us to take that, since I didn't have a mover and a seconder before we started amending.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton, for you, as the original recommendation wasn't put on the floor and you now have a new recommendation, I believe we're covered.
Okay. Any further discussion there then? Go ahead.
I guess through you, Mayor Carlton, to the staff, do we need any more specifics in regards to getting the information back based on the discussion that you heard earlier?
No. I know that doesn't inspire confidence, apologies.
No.
But no, I think the intention of the joint councils was clear, and we're happy to follow that direction.
Okay. So I will call the vote on that. All in favor? It's carried. No unfinished business, no new business, no closed session. Date of the next regular meeting will be determined by the board as needed. So if there's no further business, I will now call for adjournment. Oops.
We want to set another date for the board meeting.
So we're kind of,
I would aim for September so we can meet the Thanksgiving deadline. If you're not comfortable in setting the date now, then we can circulate a poll.
September should be good here as far as I know.
do we want to set a date in September then?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to circulate a poll of dates if that would work for the board.
What if we have Carly do that because your CAO is starting later this month and that would?
well, if we tell the date now, then. No, I'm okay either way. I think it's important, though, that we keep this process going.
Yep.
And Mr. Grady needs an answer for the fall, and
Okay, so let's have staff circulate something for later in September and call the meeting then.
By that time, we'll have all the information you were saying you should be done by.
That's good.
Okay.
the actual, if there's a consensus from the two councils that we do number 3, when do we start tearing down the bubble? Like that part, we know we want to get rid of at least some stuff there. So I guess my question is, when would that, if councils, we're all meeting later, if we were all say number 3, what maybe that's for our guests, what would that process look like?
Do we need to know what that process is going to cost us? Because we're talking about the biodigester elements, so we're fairly clear on what we want to get rid of. If we could have that pricing first, and then from that, we'll know when it would start.
I mean, we wanted to get rid of that building for a long time. So if we could get that, that would be nice to get completed. And there's members of the public that would like to see that part that's cost us all a lot of money gone. So I'd hate to have to wait till September if we're able to do it sooner than that. I recognize some of it will be based on Brittany's report, but if there's a mechanism for removing what we all kind of agreed to need to be taken out as a start to the process, that would be wonderful in my mind. But I don't know if that's doable.
I guess what I'm looking at, go ahead, you.
Sorry, yeah, if I may, I mean, there's, on that next step slide of the presentation, whether it's full decommissioning or partial decommissioning, there's a number of steps that are required. That includes the demolition grade hazmat survey, because we've got to identify and quantify the regulated and waste streams that are there. We need to do a sample residual process as well. On the all materials that could remain, and prepare a detailed decommissioning plan. So there are a number of steps that are required before we can really decommission even some of the buildings that are on site.
Just further to that, so if we gave you the go ahead and you had all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, are you one to say, is there any equipment in there that's worth salvaging? And does the company that's going to decommission it give us a price on that stuff? There must be some stuff that's worth a bit of money.
Yeah, and I mean, that would be part of refining the cost estimates that have been provided to date. We want to make sure that you're getting a class C or class C as opposed to the D. You saw that wide swath, right, of variation of price. So that's a next step as well too, which would be refining the costs and determining if there is anything that could be provided, even if there's scrap metal out of that, and that would be something that would be described in those refined costs, as well as and as part of the decommissioning plan, as well as what would be put out to tender to actually decommissioning from a contractor perspective.
I think I'd like to have all of that information with some price tags attached to it, because the next step is going to be, where is budget coming for this? So I think I'd like to see both of townships be able to go back and say, here's where the money's coming from, because it's not built into our budget this year. So if we could have that report back in September as well, that gives us the full dollar values, and then we can have an idea of when work could start and it could all happen.
We can aim for early September as well.
So at the end of the day, hopefully two councils meet and decide, agree on the same number, then the process can begin. And best case scenario, we would be fall, when we could have a little party.
We need to engage on those next steps, so that they're you could have a party for the decision.
What, in your professional opinion, what's the time frame look like?
in order to move through those next steps I did describe, that's gonna be anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And then you're out to tender as well from a demolition, or decommissioning, perspective as well, right? So, not always best to do that in the winter months for certain equipment as well too, so. I'm guessing at this point in time, and I don't wanna give you sort of false hopes that, you know, it can be done in a short time period.
Maybe before the next election.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, does staff need any more direction, or you have everything you need from us? Okay, and you'll get back to everyone with the date, so I will now, I haven't even called for an adjournment of the meeting yet. I was gonna try and do that.
Okay.
I will now call for adjournment of this meeting. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Grant, Terry, all in favor? Thank you.
Meet again.